Hi guys, and welcome to Coffee Corner. My name is Jarena, and we are so glad to have you back on what for me is a nice crisp fall evening, and will be morning by the time I post this. It has been absolutely gorgeous out. The fall weather is really starting to kick in, and I can walk outside and feel very refreshed. That's what I like to say when it's cool, not cold out, but it's very crisp and almost nippy. It's beautiful. It's refreshing, especially from those hot summer months. So it is a good time to be alive in this crazy world of ours. And you know what? It's just good to have beautiful weather and coffee next to you. So if you don't have your coffee yet, go grab it before we jump into our Bible study for today. So, for my thought today, I don't know about you, maybe you are a really good people person, but I run into a lot of people that I don't exactly get along with, that my personality clashes with. I've had some jobs in the past where are really people-y jobs, and I'm not the most people-y person in the world. So it was definitely a stretching time in my life. But you run into a lot of people that you don't necessarily get along with, or you have personality clashes, but you still have to work with them. And I was just reading through the list of disciples. So Christ choosing the disciples. He goes up to a mountain, and then they goes through the list of the 12 disciples. And I was reading through, I just had to sort of chuckle, because I'm like, wow, God picked such a diverse group of people. I feel like sometimes, if we have a couple siblings in there, but other than that, some of the only thing they had in common with some of the other people in this group was that they were Jewish. That was all. So I just want to go through the list with you guys quick and sort of get a feel for who these different people were. So I'm reading the list from Luke 6, and you can also find it in Matthew and Mark. It's the same thing. Some of them read a little bit different, but it's the exact same list. So it starts out in verse 13, and he says, "When it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them chose 12, whom he named apostles." And then we go into this list. Simon, who he also named Peter, and Andrew, his brother. So we have a set of brothers. We know from earlier accounts that these men were fishermen, that Andrew had also been following John. So they're from that little bit of a lower class working society within Israel at the time. And you have James and John, who are also another set of brothers, and they are also fishermen, as we see earlier. Then you have Philip, who we don't really know anything about, Bartholomew, Matthew, who is probably the most hated person in the group, and probably the one where everyone else cringed when Jesus called him. Okay, he is a tax collector, as we've seen earlier at his calling to follow Christ. And these people were the most hated people in Jewish society, because they worked for the Romans, they worked for the oppressors. And then we have Thomas, who we don't really know a lot about him per se. His character is developed a little bit farther on. We know he's often known as the doubter. I believe he is somewhere called the twin. So he had a twin brother somewhere. Whether or not that brother was a disciple or a follower of Christ as well, we don't know. And then you have James, the son of Alphaeus. This would be called, he's often known as James the Less, just because we don't know quite as much about him. And then Simon, called Zelotes. I never realized that read that way. So we have Simon the Zealot. Zealots were another group of Jews that were more of a political group than a religious group, and they were very actively fighting against Rome. They were named for their zealous ways, so they were known as the Zealot. So this may have been another guy that some of them felt a little bit off-put by, just because he was the radical. He was over the top, sort of, and I can only imagine, I don't know who got called first, if it was Matthew or Simon, but I can only imagine sometimes the tension that would rub between these two. You have a tax collector and then a zealot. And then you have Judas, the brother of James. So this is not Judas Iscariot. This is the other Judas. And then Judas Iscariot, which was also the traitor. So just honestly, I'm reading this and like realizing different dynamics. You have people from all different types of occupations. You have fishermen, tax collectors, political leaders. Maybe Judas had something to do with money because he was the carrier of the purse. Maybe he was like an accountant or something like that, whatever the equivalent to that was. So you have all these different occupations coming together. You definitely have different personalities. You have, James and John, which in one of the other accounts reminds us that Christ calls them the sons of thunder. You have Peter, who we already know is sort of that guy that just constantly talks and doesn't always think about what he's saying. And then you have Andrew, who seems to be a little bit quieter, but I mean, they are related. So, and then you have Matthew, who's a tax collector, this political zealot. So you just have all these personalities, occupations, different. You have family going on here. So you just have all these different things. And honestly, looking from the outside of this group, I would have to just sort of shake my head and be like, it's never going to work long term. Like, it isn't. How are you going to put 12 men, 11 of them who would be the founders of the church? How in the world is anything going to happen? But you look just a couple years later in Acts, and I believe it's the religious leaders. They're accusing Peter and John. I think John's there. I know Peter's at least there. And the religious leaders are pointing at them and saying, these are the people that turned the world upside down. And they were talking about turning the world upside down with their doctrine of Jesus Christ. 11 men who shouldn't have gotten along, and I just keep laughing because that connection between Simon and Matthew just makes me laugh, sort of at the what did the world like that should work together, like they shouldn't be able to work together, and yet God brought these people together, and these are the men that turned the world upside down. And honestly, I just think it's so encouraging, because if God can take 11 men who come from so many different backgrounds and occupations, personalities and characteristics and flaws and strengths, and these are the founders of the church, and these are the men that turn the world upside down, don't you think God can do that same work today? Like, it always amazes me that how God's work just seemed to explode, and then centuries later we wonder if God can cause revival. We wonder if the age of Christendom is coming to an end. And I think it's just encouraging to see that God took 11 of the most unlikeliest people in his culture and then as a group and turn the world upside down with them. And that's so encouraging to me, that know that God can take us, an eclectic group of believers, maybe an eclectic church, and God can use us today. We don't have to necessarily perfectly fit together. God doesn't look for the perfect fit. God makes the perfect fit. And I don't know, to me that just, it's so encouraging to look at the disciples and remember that they were very normal men, very normal men with issues and personality conflicts. And I didn't even touch on some of the personality conflicts that actually arise in the Gospels, but go through, find them, you'll see them there. And God changed these men. Obviously, none of this would have been, they didn't accomplish any of it on their own, but God changed these men, and they were a great force, and they moved forward with the gospel. And God can do that same thing today if we are willing to be molded, if we're willing to work with the body of Christ, work with other believers to forward the gospel. And I really think that God's work isn't done yet, and we can do so much to forward his work as individuals, but also as the body of Christ, no matter how eclectic we think we are and how often we don't feel like we get along. God isn't finished with us yet as the church, and I just thought that was really encouraging. I hope that's encouraging to you guys. We will be back here on Friday. I do need to apologize for not getting on Monday. I had family in, and yeah, I didn't get a chance to edit and record. So it was a busy weekend. But we hope to see you guys back Friday, and I am going to try to get a lot more consistent on Monday. We'll see. No promises. But so if you guys haven't subscribed, go ahead, subscribe, ring the bell so you can get notifications of when I do put it out. And if I get to put one out on Monday, you guys will actually know and not just pop on Wednesday and find out, oh, I have 2 videos. So go ahead, subscribe, ring the bell, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great day.